According to a report by Business Insider, at least 78 members of Congress have failed to properly report their financial trades as mandated by the Stock Act. The act requires sitting members to disclose any stock trade made by themselves, their spouse, and any children labeled as dependents.
The penalty for violation of the Stock Act is usually a $200 fine that is often waived by the House or Senate ethics officials. Those on the list include Senator Dianne Feinstein, Rand Paul, Rick Scott, Sheldon Whitehouse, as well as Representatives Jamie Raskin, Mo Brooks, Dan Crenshaw, and Debbie Wasserman Schultz. And I like some of those people. Don't like others as much.
Sure, it's a very bipartisan who's who. There are blue dog Democrats, more progressive Democrats, Republicans of every stripe. And I think that really speaks to the problem. One, the fine being so minor is kind of a tell about how seriously this kind of behavior is treated. And it's not the kind of issue that is opaque to the American public. I'm so tired of hearing politicians say, oh, this isn't a bread and butter, this isn't a kitchen table issue.
This is such an issue that...
Corruption runs to the core of what the average American understands is what's wrong with Washington.
It's a nonpartisan issue.
Correct.
You ask the common man, it doesn't matter if they vote who they voted for in the last election, they will support making this disclosure requirement stronger, or frankly, they'll just think members of Congress should not be playing the stock market at all.
Exactly.
At all.
Exactly. And when you start to look at the kind of businesses that they've invested in, it becomes a little clearer why this is such a conflict of interest.
Pharmaceuticals.
There's so many companies. It's pharmaceuticals. It's like Tesla, and you think about all of the energy regulation that comes down the pike and the subsidies that are given to electric car companies like Tesla.
Social media companies, Facebook.
Exactly.
I believe former House Speaker Nancy Pelosi was herself someone holding stock in that.
Is that right?
I think so, which was pretty hilarious because she was also constantly inveighing against them for causing the collapse of democracy itself.
It is so hypocritical. I mean, you have people invested in other media corporations. John Hickenlooper was invested in something called Liberty Media Corporation and a Liberty Broadband Corporation. On and on down the list. Rand Paul was invested in a company that manufactured antiviral COVID-19 treatment. I mean, what is going on there? Maybe something, maybe nothing. People have money in blind trust. There's all kinds of things going on. But when you look back at Jimmy Carter divesting from his peanut farm because he didn't want the appearance of having a conflict of interest in the least, and you look how far we've come from that political moment. I mean, in all seriousness, maybe you actually do, right?
Yeah.
Like that is the problem. There's, of course, 1,000,001 agricultural regulations that Jimmy Carter, oversaw during his tenure as president. But the fact that these people think that they can get away with this with impunity, and in fact, Nancy Pelosi coming out and inveighing against regulations of this sort that would keep her from trading stocks in the first place.
This is a article from Business Insider. This is the one I had in mind. Members of Congress publicly blast Facebook, but quietly invest their savings in it. House Speaker Nancy Pelosi called Facebook shameful and irresponsible. Senator Ron Wyden of Oregon suggested prison time for Mark Zuckerberg. Representative Ro Khanna, who we interview here and generally like, said Facebook should be broken up. But despite their tough talk toward the social media behemoth, all three or their spouses stood to gain financially from Facebook.
Yeah. So to be clear, this Stock Act is a disclosure requirement. Yeah. The act that would ban them from actually investing in stocks and trading while they're in Congress got quietly killed by Nancy Pelosi at the end of last year, despite the fact that she came out against it and there was public backlash about her coming out openly saying, well, of course they should be allowed to trade stocks. And it does speak to the fact that when it comes down to...
There was some expert foot dragging on her part on that one because she got in trouble for saying no, and then she was like, well, I guess we could do it if you really want to, and then she didn't.
And then she didn't. And that's, again, I hate to keep coming back. I mean, I don't hate to keep coming back to what these 20 rebel Republicans won. I love to keep coming back to it because it's such an important illustration of how to leverage power. If we had, I mean, this is the real story here, that's the headline that's going missing. If we had a real multi-party system, the kind of political factions that were able to wrest these concessions, many of which are populist, would happen much more frequently. There shouldn't just be these two parties, both of which are corporately captured. And frankly, what we saw last week was a demonstration of how small groups of people in a narrowly divided Congress can start to wrest control back for more populist interests. Now, of course, everything that they fought for and won wasn't populist. There were a lot of self-interested things, and there were a lot of things that just have nothing to do with the American people as a whole. But the fact that we live in a country where there's such a united opinion about how wrong this kind of behavior is, and there's absolutely no accountability for the big wigs in Congress.
The process prevents it. You couldn't discuss it. If someone wanted to discuss it on the floor of the House, they couldn't. Because of the previous rules.
Right.
And that's the kind of thing that we need to at least be able to have a conversation about it. What if the American people could watch a lone representative bring up this issue? Because someone would.
Yeah.
They have incentive to. Well, someone has incentive to, hopefully, to call out what the wealthier and more elite and better connected investors of Facebook and Tesla and whatever else are doing, and of Pfizer, and especially with those policies in particular, the enormous power government had to work with the pharmaceutical industry corporations to require or mandate or do research for various COVID-related vaccines, pharmaceuticals, et cetera, therapies.
Right.
And whether they have stock invested in the company has to matter, could matter.
Yeah, well, look,
that was the first call they made when they found out about the pandemic. Some of these figures, they call their stockbroker, their brother, or whoever's responsible,
right?
The wife, whoever has the, maybe they're not doing it, but someone with whom their finances are closely intermixed.
Yeah.
They call them and let them know. It's shameful behavior.
Yeah, it's disgusting. But look, maybe someone will do something about it. Maybe with these new rules and this new House, we'll see people trying to force votes on these kinds of issues. It could be a really interesting demonstration of power. If you're in Matt Gaetz's district and get him on the horn, maybe that's something that you want to lobby him to actually do with this newfound power. But it certainly will be an interesting thing to watch over the next 2 years. We'll have more Rising for you after this.